Hey everyone, welcome to another 3D Builder tutorial. In this one, we're going to look at how to make a birthday cake. So let's get started. So let's click on Insert and then click on Cylinder. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the cylinder and we're going to split it into three parts. So we are going to use, if you click on the Edit tab, you can click on the Split tool and then click on Keep Both. You have the choice of keeping the top, the bottom, or both. In this case, we want both. What we're going to do is we're going to slice off by moving this plane up. We're going to click on Split, and that creates a slice there. Now we need another slice, so we again click on Split, and this time we move it down, and again click Split. So now we have the top layer of cake, the bottom layer of cake, and the frosting. I'm a big fan of frosting, but even that's too much for me, so we'll shrink these down. So you can kind of eyeball this. So click on Deselect All just to make sure everything's deselected. Then click on what you want. Click on the Scale tool down here if you haven't already. In this case, we're just going to shrink the vertical axes. So if you drag this down, and for whatever reason, it's considered the Z-axis. I've noticed that in a lot of 3D modeling programs that the vertical axis is considered Z. In something like Unity, though, the world axis, Z is actually depth, and that Y is vertical. So just keep that in mind in case it seems a little confusing as to why you have an axis identified as one direction in one application and a different direction in a different application. So let's shrink that a bit more. Now what we can do is we can shrink this to the size that we like, and then if you come down here to Z, we can set that to a nice even number. Well, even as is in no decimal. And then if you click on this one, you can shrink it by the same amount. So the top and the bottom should now match. So what we can do is we can just line these up and they should click into place. So we're going to click on our Move tool, grab the arrows up here, and it snaps to the ground. We click on the frosting layer, and it snaps on top of that. Grab our top layer of cake, and it snaps onto that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put the frosting layer on top of the whole cake, and we're going to use a different tool. We're going to use the hollow tool, which is right there. So we go to Insert, another cylinder, but now this one needs to have a larger diameter. So we're going to click on Scale, and this time we're going to grab the corner, and you can see it going out in all directions. Just going to click on our Move tool and make sure this is even with the bottom. Now, let's slide this over, and you can see how much bigger this is. So that's way too big. Again, a fan of frosting, but that would be too thick. So let's click on Scale, shrink that down, and again, just kind of eyeballing it, but whatever you think looks right. Maybe you're making kind of a cartoonish game. You want it to be exaggerated. You want it to be thicker. Okay, so now what we're going to do, and actually if you want to see the size of the cakes, you can look at this from the bottom and then push this up. And actually doing that shows it's not centered. There. So now you can see the thickness if you're trying to make it consistent. Okay. So now we need this to get hollowed. So with it selected, click on Edit, click on Hollow, and what's going to happen is you can see this translucent silhouette or shape. So the lighter one is what remains. The slightly more opaque one is what gets removed. So you got a slider up here so you can leave more border if you want. And we will click on Hollow. So you can't really see anything yet, but what we're going to do is we're going to move this up, and then we slice off the bottom because the center was hollowed, but it still has a bottom. So with this object selected, we click on Split. This time we're going to do Keep Top, and then we move this plane just enough to make sure we're cutting off the bottom. We click on Split, Whoops. And you can see now it's hollow. If we zoom in a bit, just something I want to point out, hollow doesn't make a nice clean hollow when it's a round or curved surface. So for an interior like this that you won't see because the cake will be inside, just keep that in mind that if the curvature is going to be seen, you might want to use a different approach. Like for instance, you can put another cylinder inside of this, use the subtract tool, and that should make a cleaner. That should make a much cleaner carving out the center. All right, so we can slide that back down. Now what we're going to do is often cakes will have like a ring of like icing around the top and maybe the bottom. So again, we will go to Insert. This time we'll go to Custom. For shape, we'll go to Torus. And that's way too angular. It's also too small. So for latitude, let's bump that up to say like the high 20s or 30 even. So that's better. Longitude, longitude, same thing. Let's bump that up to 30-ish. Okay. Now this, again, is way too thick, so we need to increase the inner radius. So inner radius here. And there's an absolute, it can only go up to like 19 or 20, and then it's just too thin. So let's make it like 17 and see how that looks. So that's pretty good. Since we have to scale it out, it'll get a little bit thicker, so keep that in mind. But again, we're not being really precise. We're just kind of showing how these tools work together. So we'll click on Add, click on Scale. Again, we want to use a corner. And let's make sure that it is centered. It should snap into place. And this one is easy. You can just look around and see that looks good. And we're going to be lazy. We're going to copy this and put it on the top. So we're just going to do Edit. Sorry, we're going to do Object. We're going to do Duplicate. Slide that over. Slide it up. There we go. Okay, I think we are ready to start coloring. We can actually, I suppose we could carve out, since we want to see the inside, because why go through all that work if you're not going to show it. Let's take a slice out first. Now, unfortunately, you can't really use the split tool. You kind of can, but you're going to slice up your object, and that might show up in your final project. So you technically could take slice, rotate this like, not like that, sorry. Doesn't look right for some reason. Anyways, you can rotate that on one axis. So rather than having it split this way, you could have it split vertically, but we're not going to do that because it would split the whole cake. So what we're going to do is we're going to just use a wedge object, and the wedge will use the subtract tool and just carve that slice right out. So Insert, Wedge, and what we're going to do is we're going to rotate this, so click on the Rotate tool. And if it doesn't snap into place, just do 90. And we can move this down. Move this over. So again, doesn't have to be exact, but I think you get the idea of what we're going for. We want a slice taken out of that cake. And then again, the way the subtract tool is, it works. Whatever object is selected, if you click subtract, it will be removed, as well as the portion of any other object it is intersecting with. So watch what happens. So you've cut a nice little slice out of the cake. Only thing is when you do this, it leaves behind the color. So we will need to color this. That's why I didn't color it ahead of time. So what we're going to do, and you can see there's also a gap here, so we'll need to shrink the top a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of choose kind of common colors you might see for a cake, like you might see pink icing and maybe chocolate frosting, and then kind of like yellow cake. So Typically, I would say don't do the coloring within 3D Builder because there can be issues with it not transferring when you import it or export it to Unity. And actually, before I go any farther, I just noticed something. See how this is here? I should have pushed the bottom of the cake hasn't been cut out. Now, if you want that, if you want there to be like a little bit of a film, that's fine. But I actually wanted a nice clean cut. So let's just do an undo, and then we just make sure that okay. Sorry, undo. Deselect all. Click on it. There we go. So now it's definitely beyond the bottom, and we do subtract. Much better, nice and clean. Okay, so like I was saying, I normally won't do the coloring here, but since this is a 3D Builder tutorial, we will do the coloring here because maybe you're not using it for Unity, maybe you're using it for something else and the coloring works just fine. So we go to Paint, and basically whatever is selected, when you then choose color or texture or material, that's what you can paint. So we'll go to Color, and then you can click up here to choose a color. So let's create a pink so you can do more color. And then it's just old school sliders. That's a nice pinkish. So we'll click on OK. And now that pink is selected, see how where I point? So we'll paint that. And then we do OK for color because it hasn't actually applied yet. And then what we're going to do, actually I had said that this was going to be pink. We can make this white. The inside will be like yellow cake. So color, and we already have a yellow. That's good enough. Since the middle there is supposed to be frosting, we'll go back to pink. And then we'll make this like a white. So color, okay. Color, white. There you go. And we are almost done. So we got a nice little kind of fluorescent cake. You can say put a plate under it. So if you do deselect all, just to make sure nothing's selected, and then do sticky select, you just keep clicking on everything you want to select. So now we've got the whole cake selected, and we're going to just boost it up so we can put a plate under it. The whole thing moves up a little bit. And now we'll just put a plate under it. So we'll go back to Insert, and we'll do yet another cylinder. And let's deselect all and get rid of sticky selection. We'll scale this out again. Then we shrink this down. We can always move the cake back down if we want. We can make this a little bit thicker too. Okay. What we're actually going to do too is, since plates tend to have an indentation in the middle, we'll just move this over. We will Object, Duplicate, slide that over, shrink it down, move it up. And then what we're going to do is a subtraction again. Oops, sorry, I just scaled it. I thought I had the Move tool selected. All right. And again, the object that is selected, if you click Subtract, it gets removed plus whatever it is overlapping. So now you got a plate with a little indentation on it. And you can put that under your cake. Okay, I think that should about do it. About the only other thing would be candles. You also can kind of shrink the top here because you can see there's a space, so you wouldn't want that. So let's shrink the icing down. And then we can just move the icing ring, or I should say move the frosting down and shrink the frosting and then move the icing. Okay. Like I said, the last thing you could add candles if you want, so it would be, say, insert, and then you could once again do, say, a cylinder, but in this case, scale it up vertically and then shrink it down really, really tiny. Scale it up some more, shrink it down. There you go. And then you can just start placing these. And once you have one candle, don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just keep copying these. So just object, duplicate, duplicate, just kind of slide them around. There you go. Okay, I think that should do it. If you're going to, say, put this into a game, say in Unity, one additional touch that you could do is you could add a particle system on top of the candles. So if you want to see that, I certainly can show that as well. And then, like I said, to export this, you have to go to the menu, save as 3MF, and then in Paint 3D, you would then open that 3MF file, choose to export it or save it as a 3D model, and then you'll have the choice of FBX, and then FBX is compatible with Unity. So, okay, that should about do it. This was just meant to be a simple, fun little demonstration. It's not meant to be high-end graphics, and that's one of the things I've said from the very beginning, that this is meant more for kind of placeholder graphics or maybe kind of stylized visuals. And certainly if you put more effort into it, it would look better than what I just did. But again, this was just meant to show you how the various tools can really come together for a single project. Okay, so I hope this was helpful, and have a good day.